Thank you. I love that bit. Okay, so hopefully Millie and Alice some stuff to do about Mets have been you. Hello, John. Unmute.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, anamorphic art. Right. Put it in front of a curved mirror, and if I do share screen, you can see what they did. There you go. That's Caitlin. Okay. Then we got Millie. It's amazing how small the real image is, isn't it, compared to the actual drawing? Yeah. And then Alice, and it's a dolphin. There you go. So that's what we did as part of International Day of Light, was last Sunday. Did anyone else celebrate International Day of Light? No, just the girls then. Yeah, okay.
Just the young ones
have been. Yeah, the girls have been doing BBC microbit coding and Morse code. Eventually, they will show you how they can Morse code their names on the BBC microbit. Okay, and they've not just done that; they've done lots of other things with the BBC microbit, and they're going to give a presentation at a conference about it in America.
Wow, international fame.
Indeed, yes, yeah.
Very, very good.
Yeah, well done, guys. So this Sunday we're going to record it, film it, so that at the presentation they just show the video, and afterwards there are questions and answers.
Wow.
Yeah. How about that, eh?
That's fantastic. I'm always pleased to hear about how our young generation, up and coming, are so confident and so knowledgeable as well with things. It's fantastic to hear that. Good luck to you girls, or young ladies, I should say, shouldn't I? Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Where is she? Where's Alice? Show yourself, Alice.
Wave. I'm afraid that's all you're going to see of her tonight. But
look, the fly.
So the drawings, the anamorphic drawing, how do they create those?
The drawings came from a website to do with light, so I printed them out and the girls coloured them in. Okay.
I'm wondering what any of us would look like as an anamorphic, unreflected diagram.
Have you ever been in the House of Mirrors, a fun fair or something?
Yes.
Yeah. Get your choice there, don't you?
I love the wide range of things that you all do, STEAMettes, and not just the success that you have. You've had code on the International Space Station. You're speaking at an international conference. My goodness, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Very well done. And I look forward to see what you get up to in the future as well. So I hope you keep coming back.
Absolutely.
And inspiring us olds on what we can do.
There's more. They're only 11, 12, aren't they? Brilliant.
11, just turned 11.
Excellent.
There's a technical magazine for amateur radio called Radcom, and their article will appear in that in August.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll look out for that.
Yeah. What's your call sign there?
G8FAX, Foxtrot Alpha X-ray.
Foxtrot Alpha X-ray. Okay.
Yeah. Is it now the official name for the STEAMettes? Is it the Kent STEAMettes, like we've got the Essex STEAMettes over here?
Right. Well, their full name is Morse Ninja STEAMettes. Yeah.
I thought their name was beep 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 beep.
Well, they'll
Yeah.
do their names
That's right.
soon at the next session, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much, STEAMettes. You continue to inspire and certainly make me feel quite lazy. So amazing. But before I move on to the mystery item, I just wanted to say thank you to someone who's not here actually. I'll just let someone in. But about a month ago, I put a shout out on social media asking the Thanet technology community if they had any webcams knocking around, because there's a charity looking for them to help their clients do some remote meetings. And someone drove all the way over from Rochester to deliver a big box of webcams that they had hanging around. And let me just give you a better view. A whole box of 20 webcams was delivered, and someone else actually bought a few webcams and had them delivered there. So I just wanted to say thank you to both of those people who aren't here, unfortunately. But it's wonderful that a community can help in that way. Anyway, mystery item, my highlight of the evening, apart from the speakers, of course. This one came through John. Who provided this, John?
From Tim Long, astronomer.
Okay. So, are you ready? I'll show you this mystery item for a few minutes. You can ask some questions. Oh dear. There we go. This is this month's mystery item. Can you guess what it is? You may ask questions and I may answer them. If you subscribe to the email newsletter via geekery.uk, you would have seen this picture a few days ago. So there's a little bit of a a trick to try and get you to sign up to the email newsletter.
Is it one thing, 6 sort of different segments to it?
So yeah, there are 6
items
of this item there of varying sizes.
Varying sizes. Okay, it's not just a perspective.
No, that's not one item with 6 kind of repetitive patterns. There are 6 individual items there.
It looks like a cannon, an old-fashioned cannon with a surfboard attached at the back.
Oh, you got it straight away. No, it's not. Yeah. It's not that.
Or it could be a toilet.
It is reminiscent of that, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not that.
Is it only used in astronomy circles? No pun intended with circles. Oh, they could be ellipses, I suppose.
I would imagine an astronomer would use this, but it's not directly for astronomical purposes.
Is it a pen holder?
Duchampian?
I'm sorry, Lenny?
Is it Duchampian, as in Marcel? Would he be pleased to see this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Depending on, yeah, in certain very narrow circumstances, maybe. Does anyone have any other questions to maybe narrow it down a little bit? I tried to guess this and got it completely wrong.
For a food blender.
How would that, what are you thinking, Lenny?
An attachment. It's either that or it's part of some unknown weapons system still in development.
Okay, so when you say food blender thing, I think you're thinking that that 45-degree angle hole might have something feed through it. I think
Oh, you didn't say it's a 45-degree angle hole. That makes all the difference, doesn't it?
yes, it does. So that's a good kind of point there. Yes, something feeds through the hole there.
Prop shaft?
It's not a prop shaft. Maybe if we have to have some questions that narrow it down rather than a shot in the dark.
No.
Animal, mineral, or vegetable?
It is a mineral.
And is it metal, plastic, wood, or what's it made from?
These were 3D printed. It could be made out of any of those materials and it would function the same.
Okay. So is it an alignment aid?
In a manner of speaking, but not enough for that to help you. So I'll say no.
Okay. A guide for something. Guides for what?
Yes, I think that is definitely the right direction to go in there.
Oh, good. Do I get a gold star?
Yes, you do.
Excellent.
You have to get it yourself because this is a virtual meeting, but yeah.
Okay, I'll just go and get. Well, I haven't got any gold stars.
Oh well.
I've got a gold microbit sticker.
Oh, that would do. I award you your own gold microbit sticker. That's the most excited I've ever seen, Ed. That's wonderful. So, any last question from anyone?
Does it move very quickly when it's being used, or
No.
is it stationary?
It's not stationary, but it's not moving very fast either. Good question. Oh, look at, we've got the gold star.
Got two, just in case I get another question right.
I'd probably put that.
John, your young ladies have been doing work with microbits. How many? Would you like some gold stickers? I've got a few. If you give me an address or something, email me or DM me, or you're on Twitter or somebody via Mac maybe, and I can send over half a dozen if you like.
That'd be great. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And they can have that for their awards as a reward.
Okay. Thank you.
Lovely.
Yeah. I don't know how you want to give me an address to send it to, but work something out with Matt. And if you let Andy know, I think you're more in contact with Andy, Southend Tech Andy, and or I can give you my email address, whatever. It's not too fussed. Do you want me to put my email address in the chat?
In the chat, yeah, do it in the chat, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so no more questions. So I'm going to move on from this now. And yeah, I'll stop clicking now. So now we go over to our speakers. Let me just... Okay, so today we've got Melanie and Cato speaking. I try not to steal anyone's thunder by reading out a bio or saying anything about their speech, but I'd rather hand over directly to Melanie, who's up first, to introduce herself and give us what I'm expecting a really inspiring talk. So without further ado, Melanie, over to you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. One moment. I have to close it and open it again. I think we'd all be used to this by now, hey? Okay, so I'm Melanie King and I'm an artist based in Ramsgate. I've been in Ramsgate for about a year. Before that I was in Margate, and I am doing a PhD at the Royal College of Art, which is about astronomy and is in fine arts. And I did a master's in art and science at Central St Martin's, and before that I studied fine art, but I've always been interested in science. So I'm going to show you a few projects today that are kind of part of the projects that I'm doing. So I'm really interested in my main PhD work, thinking about the light that has travelled for thousands, if not millions of years before reaching photosensitive film. So I'm really looking at the materiality of the film, the materiality of the stars themselves, and kind of really looking into that those connections more deeply. But as part of that research, I've also been looking at different types of stars and different types of wavelengths. So the first thing that I'm going to show is a pulsar oscillograph. So if you know what an oscilloscope is, it's an object which visualizes sound. And so what I wanted to do was to kind of make a room-sized oscilloscope just by taking apart the composite bits. So I've made quite a few oscillograph installations, and they're all made in a different way. So this was the first one that I did. So I had an ultraviolet laser, which was pointing at a mirror on a speaker. And when I played the pulsar sounds, and I say pulsar sounds, meaning that there was some pulsar data that was sonified by some scientists. So I used that data and played that through the speaker. And as the speaker vibrated, the mirror moved up and down. And you can see the kind of installation shots here. And then it was projected onto a piece of phosphorescence. So I was really interested in making these stars, these wavelengths that are coming from the stars, more visible and more tangible. So I really like this idea of having like a room-sized installation where you could hear the sounds of the pulsar and you could see the kind of vibrations that I was making. So these are some examples. That it changes quite rapidly, and it changes quite a lot depending on the on the pulsar sound that you're playing. So yeah, that was quite fun. But because if you can see here, there's a mirror. It was originally stuck to the speaker, and then I let it be kind of able to move around, and it wasn't really working very well. So I decided to change some aspects of that. And while I was doing that, I also got some photosensitive paper. As you might have guessed, with the analog film, I'm really interested in analog photography, and that's the main part of my work. So I held up some photographic paper in place of the phosphorescent paper that I showed before, and the laser basically drew into the photographic paper. So I've actually got these up on my wall at the moment, where I am right now. And yeah, these are the kind of analog photographic results of that experiment. So I did that in a dark room and then developed it as usual. And then I went to a really amazing place called the Laboratory for Dark Matter Research, which is in Bulby in North Yorkshire, and that was in 2017. So I went to the lab, which is about 1 kilometre underground, and you go down into the mine where the laboratory is, with the miners that are working there. They're mining potash, I think, and salt. And then there's some amazing cars that are under the ground. It's kind of like a full roads that go for 9 miles under the North Sea. It's incredible. And yeah, they have the dark matter detector in the laboratory because basically that's where the cosmic rays coming from space can't reach, so they can have a really sensitive detector down there. So that was incredibly fascinating. And then basically when we went to the laboratory, I'm just going to skip forward a few slides. This is the dark matter detector, and this was where I got some of the data. So using that data, I then made a phosphorescent disk which was spinning, and it was using a mirror ball motor at the back of the phosphorescent disk, and it's a disk that's covered in phosphorescent paint, which I made myself with some phosphorescent powder. And then I had a laser which was attached to a solenoid, and the solenoid responded to the sonified data that I had, and that moved up and down. But that was kind of an improvement on the last one because it was slightly more controllable. But the solenoid kept pushing the laser too far and flipping it over, so it still wasn't perfect. So I decided to do another installation later on, which I'm going to show you now. So in 2018 and 2019, I was working on a project with the European Commission. It's the Joint Research Lab in Ispra in Italy, and basically the brief was to go to Italy and go around all different amazing laboratories and find a scientist to collaborate with. So in that journey, I went to an amazing laboratory where they'd built a house site, basically a whole house, and they had a laboratory that shook the house, and it was a way of testing buildings, to test how they would react to earthquakes. And then there was another laboratory which was all about car charging. So we got to learn quite a lot about the developments that are happening now in terms of car charging. And then there was also a kind of satellite testing place, which was really fascinating. But after all of that, I met someone who was working on quantum entanglement. So I'm going to, from my artist perspective, try and explain what we're looking at the moment. So this is Kostas Koutsomitros. This is his laboratory. And in the laboratory, he's got a laser going through a crystal. So it goes into two beams. I don't know if you can see my my mouse here, and then the two beams are pointing towards the photon detectors at the back, and then he has kind of a data output on each on each photon detector. And what he's doing is he's trying to determine if the data is different. So theoretically, the beams are entangled because they come from one beam. So that's my artistic explanation of his incredibly detailed research. But what I did in the following installation was to sonify that data, and then and basically using the wavelength and the wave height, and then make two oscillographs using that. I just also wanted to show you some pictures of the lab because they're really cool. So this is the same table with the photon detectors and the crystals, but with the lights on. And yeah, I spent about a day or two in his lab kind of researching more about his work. And that's how I tend to work as well as an artist. I tend to do artists in residence with different laboratories and different observatories and things like that. And then kind of try and collaborate with the scientists themselves, kind of thinking about their interests and perspectives. I can't exactly remember this. He explained this whole thing about this yo-yo, but I have no idea. Now it's lost in my memory, I'm afraid, but it was incredibly interesting. So this is the third oscillograph. So there was 2 of these, and the idea was that the viewer watching them could try and detect the differences between the data. Theoretically, both of the oscillographs would look the same, so it was up to the viewer to detect the differences. And there are some, because I think the experiment isn't particularly, it's not at the right stage that Kostas, the scientist, wanted it to be. So yeah, that was really interesting. And this time, the laser was pointed at a drum, and which it was very, very incredibly lo-fi, but it worked the best, which is funny. So it was a biscuit tin with a swimming cap on top, and then there was a tiny little mirror right in the middle of the swimming cap, and then there was a speaker inside the biscuit tin. So when the speaker played the sonified data, the vibrations were very minute on the swimming cap, and that moved the mirror a very small amount, and then the laser was fixed using a helping hand pointed at the mirror. So it was a lot more finely tuned, and it was a lot more controllable, and that was the best. And the oscillograph projections were also incredibly detailed as well. They're much finer. So that's kind of an installation that I'm quite happy with now. And the phosphorescent disc, again, they both were spinning on a mirror ball, and this time they were made in resin. So again, the kind of absorption of light onto the phosphorescence was much finer. Yeah, and that was the culmination of that, and I'm hoping to develop it even further in future. So yeah, that's something that I'll keep looking into. And again, this is when I was testing it in the studio, and trying out different projection distances. And then I'm going to talk about the all sky camera, but it's something that I have been experimenting with and haven't really got to work just yet, mainly for logistical reasons, because of where I lived, and not being able to leave it out for long periods of time. So I'm going to actually go to the picture first. So it's basically something that you can find on Instructables, and I am quite new to all of this technology. So I wanted to try something that somebody else had built first. So it's essentially a Raspberry Pi, which is put into an astronomy camera, which you'd usually put on, like astronomy CCD camera, which would usually put directly into the telescope eyepiece. And then there's a very small wide angle lens here. And then, yeah, you're using the internet capacity of the Raspberry Pi to speak to the program, which has already been built by the designer. And then it gets encased in some kind of casing. So the best thing to use is a CCTV dome. So that's what I've used for my one. And then you can put it in some kind of weatherproof casing. So this isn't my one, this is somebody else's. I couldn't find a picture of mine for some reason, but I've got a long rectangle piece which encases all of my Raspberry Pi stuff. I put a battery pack in mine just so that I could leave it out without it being plugged into the mains. And yeah, this is me testing it in my studio in Ramsgate, which is usually a dark room, hence the enlargers over there. But yeah, this is the kind of view that it takes. And the idea is that you make time lapses of the night sky over a long period of time. So that's the end of my presentation. If you want to find out more about my website, because I've got lots of different kinds of projects on there, mostly about science and astronomy, then you can go onto this webpage here. I also run a few different collectives. So I run Super Collider, which is an art and science collective, Lumen Studios, which is an astronomy and art collective, and London Alt Photo, which is a analog and experimental photography collective. So thanks very much. I hope you found that interesting, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Very interesting talk, Melanie. Thank you for that. Would it be possible for you to put those links in the chat or somewhere? So a bit quick for me to sort of like get them down. I'd like to sort of follow those up.
I collect any kind of internet references and share them after the meeting on Facebook and with the YouTube upload and so on. But yes, please go ahead and share them in chat as well.
Thank you. Yeah, both. Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Matt, as well. Right, questions. Fascinating. I mean, you started off, and you know throughout you were saying about your interest in astronomy, and that's what you're doing your PhD in. But a lot of it was percussion type instruments, drums and things. I mean, what is the link? I mean, is that just a test bed for you to prove the equipment works, your apparatus works, or do you have other interest in the music sort of scene as well with what you're doing?
That's an interesting question, actually. So yeah, I mainly, as I said, work in photography and analog. But yeah, there's something about analog technology that I find quite interesting, and
So do I. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah, that extends to music as well. And my partner does a lot of experimental sound and analog technology with his work. So that's kind of influenced what I've done in my work as well. And likewise, he then also is interested in the photography stuff that I'm doing, kind of crossed together over analog technologies.
Yeah. Is he aware of Fraser Merrick over here in Essex?
I'm not sure.
He's I don't know what you describe him as, and he's a sound artist.
Okay.
He's into tech, and he's made some. What does he call it? The photon blaster or something? Something to. He likes recording the light output from various sort of objects, you know, from lamps, the sun, torches, wow. And he translates that into sound.
That sounds amazing. I'd love to know about that.
Is he on Twitter? Or are you on Twitter? I can send you a link to him.
What's his name, Ed?
Pardon, what?
What's this guy's name?
Fraser Merrick. You're getting it up, are you, John? Matt, sorry. Try Twitter.
Yes,
Twitter.
There we go. Lovely. Thank you, Melanie. That was fascinating. I was interested in the patterns that were drawn on the oscillograph, because they looked almost like they could be like representations of the physical movement of the stars. But you know, that process of sonification of data, is it showing the wobble of these stars, or is it something else?
Yeah, so in the case of the pulsar, a pulsar is a star that rotates extremely fast. So the data that is used is kind of picking up on that sound. So it is, the pulsar oscillograph is influenced by the wobble of that star, except it's a recording. So yeah, it's just that translation from like the output of the star into sound.
I love the notion that we're kind of, as you said before, this is something that happened perhaps millions of years ago, but it's so detailed. It's this pattern that goes, you know, it's quite wobbly around, and then suddenly it darts off in one direction, and it's that weird combination of very fast changing motion, but it's millions of years old. It's a bit of a mind twist seeing it laid in front of you in such a way. It's amazing.
Well, sorry, somebody else wanted to ask the question. I'll hog it.
I just wanted to ask, I really like this idea of artists in residence with scientific laboratories, and you know what you've said, I can see the relationship, you know, for your work with the labs, but I'd be very interested, in your opinion, what is the role, do you think, or what is the feedback loop, do you think, from the artists in residence back to the laboratory?
Yeah, so that is something that I'm kind of looking at in my PhD as well, like what is the role of the artist? And I think there's a possibility that that artists can help scientists to uncover elements of their research that they didn't know before, or they didn't kind of see before. So an example with the cosmic ray oscillograph, the particle physicist that I was working with, she really enjoyed the installation because she works crunching numbers, coding with the particle physics data all day. And when she saw the installation, she kind of felt it was more tangible. It seemed more real, kind of having that translation of the data into something sensory. So there's that example. But I also think that artists can help scientists to discover new knowledge through explorations. And I think that only can happen when it's a true collaboration. And that's why I'm really interested in not like just translating what a scientist is doing, but also working with them to kind of make something together that's meaningful for both parties. And I feel really strongly about that. Yeah.
Have you oh, sorry, no.
I was going to say, I don't want to just take data from scientists. I want to, work with them to make something.
Have you come across another artist by the name of Gemma Anderson?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, she wrote a book called, I think it might even have been her thesis, was Drawing as a Way of Knowing. And her approach was she wanted to abandon the Linnaean taxonomy for something that looked at biological structures, but she approaches the work as an illustrator, actually, and she worked with various scientists and organizations dealing with everything from anatomy through to minerals and then in mathematics as well. And you know, I just, the reason I asked the question actually is that in her book she also deals with the subject about the role of the artist working inside the laboratory, and you know, I've only got her opinion, so I was quite interested in yours as well. But yeah, you might be very interested in her book. It's just a collection of essays, but she deals very heavily with that subject. And actually, interestingly enough, very similar view to you as well, which is, you know, particularly in the realm of mathematics, was the ability to actualize highly conceptual abstract concepts. So yeah, but anyway, that's, yeah, great.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'd love to know more about that.
It is a what I see the role of an artist. I'm an engineer. I've worked with a local artist over here, Vicky Button, on a couple of large scale sort of installations. One in particular, it was taking sort of pollution data from Chelmsford town and around Chelmsford town, and translating that into light to give a sort of representation of how bad the levels of pollution are. That was all run on a Raspberry Pi as well. This was several years ago. Andy was involved as well for the time being with it. But you know, scientists and engineers are great in their field, but sometimes they have communication issues, difficulties. I don't mean that sort of like disrespectfully, but they are, you know, so focused on the work, they don't know quite how to sort of like translate that to the general public. They expect or they think everybody's got a PhD or even a a higher level of scientific knowledge than what they have. And I think it's fantastic what artists do, how they look at some technical, highly technical, complex data, and then translate that down so that members of the public can can understand it a bit better. So great, I think they're important to sort of tongue-tied, important contributors to the scientific community and science in general.
Yeah, me too. And I'm incredibly inspired by other artists who've done similar collaborations as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Melanie, I noticed quite a lot of iteration between the works and within the works, and a bit of experimentation and learning from what worked and what didn't work. I mean, could you say something about the sort of engineering process that you follow in doing that?
Yeah, I think, I guess trial and error is the main thing that I've been trying in terms of trying to find new iterations. And at the moment I'm trying to make different developers out of different plants, and I use a similar kind of process of kind of trying out different things and seeing how they work, and if they don't work, trying to improve a different aspect. And also I didn't mention that I'm doing another artist in residence at the moment with the University of Birmingham School of Metallurgy. So I'm doing a project at the moment which is about silver reclamation and silver recycling, which is all tied into astronomy because silver has been found in supernovae and kilonovae by an astronomer called Camilla Hansen. So I've been working with the engineering department there, learning more about different metals, which has been fascinating, but that's in its very, very early stages at the moment.
Did you say kilonova?
Kilonovae, apparently.
Kilonova, I'm sorry, does that mean there's more than one of them? It's
I think
what is that? I know, well, I've heard of a supernovae, but I haven't got a clue what a killer one is. Are we in danger?
No, it's not. I think it means kilo 1,000.
Oh, a kilo. Sorry.
Kilonovae.
Yeah.
That sounds scary, kilonovae.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I'll actually put the article in the chat because it's fascinating.
I have a physics question.
Yeah.
Did you go to Whitby when you went to Bulby Mines?
I did. Yes, I did.
Of course, yeah. Now the physics, quantum entanglement. No one knows how it works. Not even me.
Not even you, John.
Sorry?
Even you?
Even me.
Well, it must be unknowable then.
It is. Does your artwork help us to understand what it's all about?
That's a good question. Yes, I think it does in some respects. And I think the key thing behind all of those kinds of installations is the idea of tangibility, because quantum entanglement is quite an abstract idea. Like you said, it's really hard to kind of understand. But if you can somehow sense the data through a kind of audio-visual way, then I think that makes it more approachable, more understandable.
Yep. Okay.
I'm just wondering, when you make this work, obviously there's some sort of endpoint of how it's delivered as a piece. Is it as installations, or are there just photographs, or what's techniques are you thinking about there?
Yeah, that's a good question. In all of the artworks, I had them set up as installations, so it was a room that someone could go into. But the very first one was like 2 rooms, so I had the photographs in the kind of daylight, so you could kind of see them kind of as a two-dimensional frame. And then you could then enter the installation always in kind of a dark space. So you could really put the focus onto the installation.
It's interesting. I think there's a bit of a theatrical element because myself, I grew up doing that wonderful thing called analog black and white photography, where you have the amazement of a darkroom, you know, you're 13 and all that, and it kind of stays with you. I was thinking if that is also obviously something you want to use, because you know, going to things like planetariums and has that element about it as well. So it's, as I'm saying, it sounds like it's not just 2D framed work. It's the whole thing has to have that moving from a different lit room to a dark room and all that, which I think obviously expands your premise almost.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that before, like the connection between going in the dark room, going in an observatory, and then also going into this kind of strange space that I've created. But yeah, I think there is something there.
Yeah, all right. Well, carry on the good work, as they say. Look forward to the next show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I grew up, I'm a electronic engineer. You know, you might notice from my appearance of a few years standing. In fact, I'm sort of almost retired now, if not retired. Retired, that was, not anything else. Yeah, I mean, my main love and my main sort of work is in medical electronics, but it was and research, but it was all done on the analog system, you know, in a time before sort of like all the electronic components become, you know, sort of slaves to a digital sort of life. And that's where they're trapped, you know, and it's all, you know, if you know about digital systems, it's all about discrete levels. There's no continuity, no continuum between one and another. I mean, it's a bit like quantum states or quantum steps. You just go from one to another, up and down, but there's no sort of, you know, nice line. And I prefer nice lines and curves and things, rather than a little zigzag up and down. But that's by the by. Oh, John's eating his dinner or something. It's making me, it reminds me, I've got to go and get my supper, so I shall return in a few minutes. I'll be listening, but go and get yourself a bite to eat. Making me hungry now.
Thank you very much, Melanie. That was wonderful to hear about all of these projects. So thank you very much for your time tonight and for speaking to us. And we agreed at the last meeting that rounds of applause are something that works over Zoom. So well-deserved round of applause, I think. Thank you. Okay, so on to Cato now, if you're ready.
I am indeed.
Excellent.
All right, so
over to you, Cato.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, sorry. Clearly charming at the video. So full disclosure time, okay. The first thing that I should make you all aware of is that my wife has gone out for the evening and my two kids are peacefully sleeping next door. All right, but this is a changeable situation. So I want everybody on board with me there. The other thing I want you guys to understand is that actually I am going to read my presentation. There are no slides, so you're going to hear me and see me, but just in case my eyes are darting around in a funny way, you can know that I am I'm reading. I would say the best Instagram, by the way, is to actually go to @CatoCreates, because that's the that is my old company that I have changed. So anyway, I'm not going to say much about this speech. Suffice to say, I'm just going to read it to you guys, and then we can talk about it later, because actually I don't want to give too much away. So here we go. So anyway, my name is Cato, and over the course of my career, I've come to think of myself as an information designer. I make extensive use of digital tools in my practice, and I find the relationship between creative practitioners and their computers to be of great interest. You see, you can use a pencil to play the drums, parry an imagined foe, or for its intended purpose to make marks on a surface, be that writing or an illustration. In all of the mentioned cases, the relationship between the wielder of the pencil and the output is direct. The pencil acts as an extension of ourselves, and it creates marks and percussive sounds or gestures. This is not to say that pencils and more widely other art tools and materials do not possess a richness of properties, can produce a surprising and potentially wonderful unintended results, opportunities for further exploration, but they do not possess in any way, shape, form, and intelligence of their own. Now, consider a mouse click. Unplugged or disconnected, a mouse, depending on its age, makes a reassuring click. At least I feel reassured by the mechanics of a button that actually clicks. This action output response is certainly not the intended function of the mouse, but it does sit at the very extent of the direct relationship between a mouse and the wielder of their mouse. The clicking of a mouse is rather the initiation of an abstract command whose output is dependent on a whole host of variables. Is the mouse connected? What operating system are you running? What software are you using? Where in the sequence of commands are you? Do you have enough RAM to commit this action? Do you have enough processing power to initiate the function? When you click a mouse, you are actually setting off a mostly invisible chain of events of seemingly limitless complexity that will ultimately result in the interpretation of your idea. And at this point, there are two key terms and concepts that I would like to consider more fully, being complexity and interpretation. Computers and the tasks they perform are complex. I first encountered a graphics program when I was a child. My dad got us a copy of Coral Draw in the early 1990s, and at the time it must have looked like the future, but the limitations of early computers by today's standards were very severe. It came in a box of probably 1 million floppy disks. It took an age to open both the box and the program. There were only 256 colors. You could build up a collage of scenes from a limited library of bitmap images, all stored on the computer. It took up a lot of space, and in short, it was incredible. Even 10 years ago, when I started working on graphics programs professionally, and things still came in boxes, even starting up Photoshop or Illustrator required the making and drinking of a full cup of coffee just to pass the time sitting in front of the loading screen. However, as Moore's law has played out, computers have gotten faster and cheaper, and the contents of an entirely lavishly furnished media room have been condensed down into a modern desktop or laptop computer. And even as I wrote this presentation, I was listening to music being streamed to me whilst typing with a swathe of communications, including emails, news notifications, and text messages, all being broadcasted to me from the world out there. Things have gotten both easier and more complex. However, in its immediacy and ease of use of these diverse interfaces, applications, and services that belie them, However, it is the immediacy and ease of use of these diverse interface applications and services that belie and mask their complexity. And in many respects, it's that complexity that was always there. The reason that computers are able to handle these tasks we give them is as a result of the interplay between their hardware and software components. They store the knowledge on their hard drives, they use short-term memory or RAM to load up what they need for their immediate objectives, and they process jobs or tasks through their CPU. The operating system acts as an intermediary between us and these working parts and provides us access to what we need and prioritizes and manages everything else that's going on under the hood. Whilst it is not accurate to say that they have a mind of their own, through their action of sorting, prioritizing, and actioning their knowledge, we can say that they need space to think and that they can also get overloaded and stressed. It is this complexity that drives the need for interpretation. In illustration and image editing software, there are two key formats. These are vector and bitmap approaches. With bitmap images, the canvas acts as a grid made up of tiny squares or pixels. Each pixel has a single color value, and when we view these tiny squares filled with color, they collectively act to fool our eye so that we see an image rather than just a bunch of squares on a page. It is important to note that each pixel also, alongside its color value, has a specific location within the image. A vector graphic, on the other hand, is not a fixed image at all. Vectors themselves are formula to calculate the magnitude and direction of a line between 2 points. So each line between a point is one equation, with the variables constantly changing to account for zoom and image position. The more points or anchors you have in an image, the more equations you need. The benefit of the system is that the shifting variables will allow for a curve or a line to be rendered smoothly, so there's no pixelation. Also, While on a bitmap image, the computer has to store all the information for every pixel, including color value and location. A vector image needs only store an equation for every point, so the vectors are much more lightweight. Why am I telling you this? Well, I think we can all agree it's very complex, but also it draws into sharp focus the extent to which a computer has to interpret our instructions. Back to the pencil. When you draw a line on a surface, like a page, the mechanics are simple. You press the graphite of the pencil onto the surface, say a piece of paper, and pulling your fingers along the page, you rub or impart traces of the graphite onto the surface of the page. This will take the form of a line, or in the case of my daughter, more often than not, a unicorn or a princess. If you paint, you get a painted line, pen and ink line, etc., etc. Draw a line on a computer, and depending on the application, you get a mathematical equation or series of filled black squares. Regardless of which way you do this, the information still has to be processed through the interplay between software and hardware, as mentioned earlier, and queued up with a variety of tasks your computer might be busy with at the time. All this through the abstract gesture of mouse click and drag. Lines and shapes are simple enough, but the world of digital illustration's main draw, apart from the ability to undo, is its wide variety of automated functions, where machine intelligence plays an increasing role. Take Adobe's Sensei AI, which does a lot of the thinking for creatives as it integrates with various programs from their suite. In Photoshop, it can create artificial fills that intelligently sample from the image to seamlessly cover over details, and it can recognize people's faces. Tools like these present great opportunities, but they also shift the dynamic where one is acting as where one was acting as an illustrator or traditional graphic designer, to where one is taking more of a creative managerial role while the algorithm and the computer create the work. So why am I telling you this? Are computers a threat? Shall we kill them? Do we need to start remembering their birthdays? The answer is not really, but perhaps it's time we consider the dynamic of our relationship and be more mindful of their well-being. For some time now, I've come to see my work that I create with my computer as being a collaborative effort. While I'm the boss, and at least until the robot revolution, and we listen to jazz and not techno. As my career has progressed, my projects and appetite for experimentation and boundary pushing have grown accordingly. Sadly, my beleaguered digital assistant has not always been able to keep pace with my aspirations. In the first instance, it is far from economical to simply buy a new computer every time I see the spinning wheel of death, and actually the inefficiency is not always with the machine. By becoming aware that working with a computer, I was collaborating with an intelligence expressly not human or animal and approaching neither, and that intelligence had reasonable limitations, it led me to start planning my workflows and strategies accordingly. These methods for alleviating strain on my computer range from storage methods to illustration and design techniques. They might not all be perceptible in the finished work, but collaborations between humans aren't often either. But they do drastically improve our working relationship. Perhaps more excitingly are the instances where the development of these strategies has directly influenced the aesthetic qualities of the work produced and gone on to open up new possibilities for what concepts and ideas can be explored through my artistic and commercial practice. A number of years ago, I began looking at botanical illustration, and I'd been visiting an exhibition of a botanical watercolorist, Rory McEwen, and was greatly impressed by his hyper-realistic paintings of flowers and fruit. At the time, I would say that I was a capable vector artist, and I was confident in my ability to capture details through line drawings. However, natural shading and painting were most certainly not in my wheelhouse. Nonetheless, I decided to see how I might be able to try using Illustrator and Photoshop to create artworks in this style. To date, I would say this is not materialized for two reasons. The first is that I am not Rory McEwen, and I do not possess the ability required for hyperrealism, though I do very much admire them. And if you are interested in the many ways the style of artwork can play out, I would refer you to the work of C.J. Henry, who uses watercolor pencils, and Oscar Okono, who uses a ballpoint pen. The second reason is that something very interesting for me happened as I started working with the computer to create these images. As I mentioned, I am confident at my line art, but I was not so much in using color and shading. The plant shapes I wished to draw were very complex, and so in order to capture their three-dimensional qualities, I started to take lessons from the logic of how images are managed by the computer, and began drawing them on pads of tracing paper, allowing me to capture both the logic of the plant structure and its detail from back to front. I would then bring these artworks into Adobe Illustrator and then turn each of these layers of tracing paper into layers of vector shapes. One of the big challenges was size of the files that I was working with. The illustrations I was creating had a very high resolution and a lot of detail. And when I took my vector graphics into Photoshop to begin painting them digitally, I quickly started seeing the evidence of the stress being experienced by my computer. This could range from the computer hanging and falling out of sync with the cursor, which can be very tedious, to files becoming corrupted as the system battled to process them. The works being created were, however, yielding very pleasing results early on. And so I was keen to see how I could finesse my approach to allow me to continue my explorations into hyperrealism. So I started looking at my workflow and how the file sizes might be better contained. I found a number of tricks that allowed me to reduce the stress in the computer's workflow, but the biggest and most exciting change I made was to the number of layers that I had in my documents. Layers are great for being able to organize and assess the details of an illustration or artwork, but they come at a cost. To reduce the layers, I used Adobe Illustrator to create different shapes using high contrasting colors. The result of this was that I could then condense layers while still being able to select them easily with the selection tool in Photoshop. Now, I appreciate that this will not make a lot of sense to anybody that is not familiar with these programs. However, what happened next is plainly evident. The high contrast colors look very beautiful as the artworks themselves. And by selecting specific areas and painting over them, I started to create works that allowed me to explore the form of the plant's organic structures, both at the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional level. These revelations of my work would not have been possible had I not started to appreciate the dynamic and relationship between myself and my computer in this way. I started to see myself as being responsible for managing its tasks to improve its performance, whilst actively incorporating feedback from how it performed to improve how I set up my workflow. I also began allowing how it rendered my ideas to influence the creative development of the work. And I am the first to agree that this way of work cannot and should not be seen as a collaboration in the traditional sense between people or between people and an animal intelligence. When I was writing this talk, I was actually asked by a friend, if this is a collaboration, then what does the computer get out of it? And I think this is an important question and one that remains open for me as well. For the purpose of this talk, I steered clear of popular notions of machine intelligence and the big data and the wild world of AI. And I have done this because often these discussions take us too quickly into the fantasy world of tomorrow and to a space so big and technical, we can easily excuse ourselves for lack of agency. Melanie Mitchell, in her book, Artificial Intelligence, A Guide for Thinking Humans, sums up the situation with the world of AI and machine learning as best as I have seen it, when she says that what I have found is that the world of AI is in turmoil. What I can say is that I have become highly skeptical of the potentials of AI to replicate human intelligence or exceed it. Intelligence, as far as I can see, is a mountain with many peaks. Things we consider to be the exclusive domain of human intelligence frequently get shown up to be practiced by animals as well. Even crows use tools to get their food. Intelligence is something that occurs in a spectrum with many points, such as human and animal intelligence, and then more granularly as the many types of human intelligence, such as being skilled at sport or being good with numbers. The superintelligence that we are pursuing with machine intelligence is the only one kind and not the best or ultimate kind. That said, I do believe that we are creating an intelligence and one that could very likely want to exert agency in the future, and we should be mindful of the type of intelligence we want and may end up creating. At the corporate and state level, these concerns bring up big questions around ethics, policy, and regulation. But I think we as users have a role to play as well. Do we treat the machines we work with as mindless slaves or tools to output our bidding, which sets us up for a very rocky precedent, both in the future and now, how we interact now? Or is there an enriching experience to be gained through acknowledging the increasing complexity of the inner workings and their interpretive function to become better and more responsible managers and active stewards in their development? That is all, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Unmute.
brilliant.
Thank you very much, Cato.
I was worried that was the point that I found out that I was on mute the whole time. So.
Sorry about for disappearing off so long. My Windows decided to unceremoniously have a black screen of death. an illegal shutdown, or whatever they call it nowadays. So I had to reboot, but fortunately it's all come back. It all seems to be working at the moment. So I missed the first part of your presentation. I apologize for that, or missed more than what I intended to. But yes, fascinating.
So Cato, you were talking about computers, if they're a collaboration or just a tool, but if you take that a little bit further to the other side, that they're a constraint. So that they're not a collaboration or a tool, but they're something that slow you down or constrain what you're trying to do. Is that always a negative thing?
No, not at all, actually. I mean, that's the thing is that, so the reason that this talk has come about, I suppose talk or article, I'm not quite sure which area it falls into, is I've become quite interested. I'm starting a research project around natural language processing and diversity and inclusion, and this idea of, I suppose it fits into a wider arc of how we treat intelligence within society as well. But one of the things I think that, in the same way that machine intelligence can be a constraint to what we do, or how we work with computers can be a constraint to what we do, it's kind of strange in that it has parallels with working with various personalities as well. And I think that the constraint is good insofar as it offers us an opportunity to innovate within these spaces. So I think the constraints are, I mean, boundaries are important,
Yeah, I used to work for a large company that would make complex safety critical systems, and they had processes over processes over processes to make sure that the engineering went right, and reviews, and just a heavy weight of stuff that the engineers generally thought was just constraining and stifling any possibility of innovation. But there was a fairly senior engineer that I worked with that was a bit of an outlier in that he was saying that all of these processes and constraints actually supported innovation, because it made all the worries about, is this the right way to do things, kind of go away. So you could concentrate on fixing the problem, doing the engineering. And I think I still disagree with him a little bit, actually, how constraints, they stop people thinking in out there kind of ways. It puts them on railway tracks to follow what happened yesterday instead of trying to do something new.
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably one of the things that's become interesting now with, and I suppose in this instance I refer specifically to to what I've seen with the development of the creative cloud technologies, and I think it has wider relevance, is how, I don't know whether it is the change in culture that allowed for beta software to become the software that ultimately gets released, but we've started to have communities emerge around these applications, and the feedback from those communities and how they use them is something that's very much a part. It's now a part of the culture for the development of this stuff. So I mean, and that's the thing, is I kind of feel like the periods of constraints, they exist in waves, and there are opportunities to correct them. But I think it's it does require the engagement of people as well with the software, and that's and with this process. So, but yeah, I mean, I would say that that's possibly the remedy to that situation.
But that is an interesting point in that. So you mentioned CorelDRAW and how software and Moore's law have this kind of ballet going on that affects the way people use those tools. But at the same time, we've got so much more connected in just a couple of years ago, unimaginable kind of ways. So as well as being constrained, we are being connected and released in unexpected ways. So that's another side of this conundrum that you talk about, that crowdsourcing of inputs and review and identity and all sorts of things. It's inherent almost in every part of our life. Is what I'm doing Instagrammable? That's what seems to be the direction it's going.
Yeah, and to be fair, also it's deeply problematic insofar as it kind of allows the most privileged voices to speak. I mean, the fact of the matter is you have to have access in order to be able to be a contributor, and that for the research that I'm hoping to do, and I have started the project in South Africa now, is actually looking to tackle this idea of access and how we contribute. I mean, if you look at the stuff coming out of Algorithmic Justice League, or there's a book by someone by the name of Catherine O'Neill, which is Weapons of Mass Destruction, and there are a bunch of books out there. The book that I mentioned by Melanie King, the narrative is very much around the fact that you require these technical expertise, that a lot of these things they occur within a black box, and actually being able to talk about these things is highly restricted. But the fact of the matter is that this stuff actually impacts us at almost every level of our lives. I mean, if you think about the fact that when you call the bank, you've got to you've got to be able to deal with a voice assisted service. If you're using Alexa can't say my name correctly, and certainly can't find a lot of the music that I want to listen to because the names are slightly funny. But the fact, I personally believe that I myself am not a I have a very limited background in computing, and I have as far goes my design credentials and working with these programs, I've self-learned through early mornings and textbooks to be able to get myself to where I am. But I still believe that people do deserve to be represented and to have a place at the table to discuss how this technology is developed and at what point we should be allowed to opt out of how this is coming about. And essentially, my project is aimed at establishing a platform for these discussions to be had, and just working out a way. So actually, I mean, one of the ways that I'm considering is actually by using theater and theater practices such as theater sports and the like to be able to create a space to be able to relate this information and open up a discussion about it.
Fantastic. Well, does anyone else have any questions? Just make sure I'm not missing anything. Dan, you posted something in chat. Is that?
Yeah, I just thought it might be relevant. Cato, you were talking about how you needed to start sort of serving tasks to the machine to get the best out of it, and it just reminded me of this idea of mechanical sympathy. In the article I posted, there's a quote from Jackie Stewart where he said, "You don't have to be an engineer to drive a car, but you've got to have mechanical sympathy." So I just thought it was quite an interesting sort of there was some similar ideas there. Mechanical sympathy has been talked about quite a lot in software development, so I thought you might find it an interesting article.
Well, thank you. No, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll definitely have a look at that. There was a discussion that we were busy having today in the studio while we were talking about this. Is this idea of how problematic the word empathy has actually become in terms of how we see how I was thinking specifically of there was an article in New Scientist about how someone had done a sonification project by looking at spiders' webs and the fact that spiders' webs have various densities, and that actually as the spider moves across the web, what happens is that the vibrations from the various densities actually feed back, and they've created an experience where the artist said that people could see the world through the spider's eyes, and it's a difficult statement to make, because the fact of the matter is that we have absolutely no way of being able to gauge what parity with that experience, and that's and on the other side, in the realm of AI, they were talking about with neocognition and I'm gonna have to say the word convolutional. Oh, for heaven's sake. No, all the words have gone from my head. But essentially how computers recognize images. And the fact that actually, if you hold up an image of a dog to a person on a computer, although they may come back with the same answer, there's actually no way of being able to understand how the machine actually interprets that image. That there's no basis for saying that the person and the computer are seeing the same thing. It's just that the output is the same. And that's the difficulty with this word empathy when we apply it to both computers or to back into the animal kingdom, is that although we seem to be having these similar experiences, from an output perspective, or from the way that we process them ourselves as people, we can't necessarily pin that back on the experiences of the things that we are looking at.
Could you actually apply that also human to human, as well as obviously human to computer and human to animals, quite different, but some people are colorblind, some people have had different, visual growth problems when they were younger, and some people have that thing where they hear a sound and then they see something, so that's like an enhanced version. So, human to human, what I experience might be different to what everyone else experiences as well.
You definitely can. So there are two things that are quite interesting there. The one is that there's a threshold, and again, unfortunately, the name of the threshold has now completely left my head. It's in Melanie King's book again, but that's from a person to person, which is essentially it's the threshold is basically it's a level of trust that if you hold up if you hold up complex experiences or concepts between people, that there's some parity of experience that allows you to trust another human being's experience of the world as well. But on the other side of that, and that's the point that I really want to start looking at around intelligence, is that I feel that with a lot of the literature and a lot of what is being aimed for with machine intelligence, we sort of have like this idealized picture of things being super intelligent but actually intelligences vary and experiences vary between people, and these things are all valid. They're what make our society function. And it really starts opening up more around ideas of people being differently abled and having different experiences of the world that are actually valid and contribute to society as as it evolves. I myself was terrible at school, but since then, stuff started to make sense. So
there seems to have been lots of talk, I suppose is the right word, about autism and how people deal with that and opening up that condition, I suppose, to be more mainstream in a way, to accept those differences and understand them more, and how normal isn't normal. It's just perhaps the most populous one or something like that. And there's lots of work around, or lots of talk about AIs and how they are designed by humans and retains the bias of those humans, and there's a bit of a relationship between how maybe autistic people fit in or don't fit in with society because it's not built for their needs, and how AIs are built for the needs of the designer, which don't necessarily match the needs of society. So there's a bit of a link between those two, between the sort of organic us and the created computer us, in a way.
No, very, very much so. And I think that's, I mean, that's, I remember reading an article in National Geographic, must have been about 10 years ago, where it was drawing comparisons between people and people society and superorganisms like ant colonies and beehives, and actually looking at the fact that that there are within human traits, there are potentially specialist roles that are held by having different traits. And they are things that don't necessarily fit with society as society has evolved, but those things still exist, and they are considered as abnormal or not catered for, or actually that's but the thing is that human society is a moving and changing thing. It's always moving and changing, and the fact that, and what we can do when we start looking at intelligence as being something that is far more varied and that occurs on a spectrum. My passion is not necessarily just dealing with machine intelligence. It is rather incorporating machine intelligence into that spectrum as well, so that we can contextualize it. But looking at how we treat differing human intelligences and animal intelligences together, and looking at where support can be used to actually grow the potential of people of various things, as opposed to making people dependent or imprisoned by those support networks, which is what happens, and it doesn't happen just with varying abilities. It happens with various economic groups as well. It's the fact that we don't use the full set of tools, or we don't give we don't provide opportunity for people to have productive and happy lives all the time.
Actually, I've become quite interested in the digital divide, which was growing pretty rapidly apparently before the lockdown, but has accelerated hugely during lockdown. So we've all heard stories perhaps that kids are studying at home. Some kids are lucky enough to already have a laptop at home. Quite a lot of kids have to use their mum's iPhone and share it with their brothers and sisters to do their homework and so on, and that is really exacerbating a long-term digital divide. And maybe I just open this up to everyone here and ask what they've seen of what evidence they've seen of a growing digital divide in our local communities.
I mean, there seems to be a growing dependence on digital. We're talking about computers here, computing type technology, mobile phones. I don't have a smartphone. I've never had one. I'd never want one. I don't want to put my whole life on it, but that's, a lot of people have those. I'm quite sort of IT literate, competent in programming in several languages, as an electronic engineer. So technology doesn't scare me. I'm not a technophobe by a long shot. Maybe I'm a mobile phone or smartphone phobe. I'll grant you that, a bit more specific. I do think, I mean, I grew up in a time, I'm an old boy now, and I won't say probably somebody get upset, but an old person. Yeah, I'm 68 in a few weeks' time, and I've seen a few changes, a lot of changes in my life with technology, a lot of other changes as well. But you know, I remember a time when I was at school, we didn't have computers, we didn't have electronic calculators to do our work our sums out on. We had either logarithmic tables, mathematical tables to look up, or a slide rule, which was an analog device for doing the calculations on, for engineering type calcs. And we've lost all of that. I mean, when I was at university, we didn't have that much. There were computers around, yeah, for sure, but there wasn't that much on the course. There wasn't that much emphasis on using computers. Nowadays, you can get a computer to do sort of like virtually everything for you, anything for you, certainly mathematically. And whilst I think they are liberating devices, very much so. I couldn't live without one now. It's almost sort of say my computer crashed, my laptop crashed a few minutes ago, and I thought, oh dear, what happens if it's died? I can't get can't go out now and buy a new one. I can't get up, and I mean, I'd have to see if I've got the money for that, but I'd need a computer to get on and check my bank balance. We are so dependent on it. Well, and also actually, Ed, the kids. Stop me.
Ed, I'm considerably younger than you, but I remember.
Don't look it.
Good. But I remember log tables and not being able to use calculators in exams and all of that kind of stuff. So your experience and my experience 20 years later was minimally different. Now, my daughter's 4 years old. 10 years ago, the technology that was available to people has changed significantly. So there's a pace of change behind all of this as well that's accelerating. So the world runs on digital computers. There was a pipeline in the US which was closed down by some hack recently, which affected all sorts of aspects of life.
Yeah, I mean, in my world of medical electronics, there's has been for a number of years a concern about infusion pumps and other sort of like life support technology being hacked. And there's been a few cases where they've been hacked, or at least in theory, they could, you could murder somebody with them from, the other side of the world. But yeah, before, I mean, I won't hog it all. But the other thing that was striking me, I forget, maybe it was you, Cato, when you were speaking, or maybe when somebody else was saying something. Have you come across, guys, the beam robotics? It was popular in the 1970s. It was a big thing back then, taking your pebble out for a walk on a lead, and that it's a bit hippie-ish, bit new wave sort of. What's it? But it's that beam. It's an acronym. It stands for biological, electronic, aesthetic, and mechanical robots. And these things were very simple, no intelligence in it at all. And they worked on a simple sort of electronic circuit. They called it a bicore, BICORE. You can look it up on Wikipedia, both of those. So there was no intelligence, and it was amazing what sort of responses you could get out of a combination of simple sort of contraptions, devices that sort of simulated. And it made me think, and it has done several times, what is actually intelligence? And is it what we think it is? Is it actually intelligence, or is it something much more basic, an instinct, a survival sort of mechanism? Food for thought.
I mean, that is one of the big, I I mean, that's the heart of all of this, though, is that this idea of what is intelligence, because it's actually something that is not clearly properly defined at all. And from what I can see, looking, from reading, intelligence really seems to sit around complexity. And it's a complex, and it's a condensed complexity, so that to the extent that it becomes like a matrix. But it is about the fact that something is able to do so many tasks, but at the same time be able to operate between those, as well. But the thing that when I started writing this talk, that really got to me was this idea of interpretation that happens, and I really did, when I was writing this, I really did pick some of the more basic functions that a computer might do, but just to stress the fact that this interpretation actually does happen. It's not a case of where you pick up a rock and throw it, or move something with your hand. It is about the fact that you do a gesture, and that gesture is received and then interpreted, no matter how simply, by the thing that you're getting it to do, and then you get an output result. And just being conscious of the fact that it happens at such a simple level, or seemingly simple level, actually.
Have you come across Professor Kevin Warwick?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, I mean, he's been around. I think he's now at Warwick University.
Mm-hmm.
He started off life as probably a postdoc down in Surrey, University of Surrey. He's very into robotics. He's done quite a lot of research in the field, and one of his fortes, if you like, is that he thinks that robots should have sort of like laws, so they should be protected like animals are. And also, he's done a lot of work on artificial intelligence, on the ethical and moralistic side of things. I mean, he is, I believe, he is an engineer by trade and profession, and education, but he's ventured out into there to that realm. And I think we do need to look at, thinking that something else that you were saying, Cato, earlier about, we need sort of like, if you like, working groups to discuss what we should do. We can do a heck of a lot with technology, a heck of a lot, but I think the legal systems all around the world, and others are lacking far behind. And what controls are there? We might, as a society, whatever that is, we might say, oh no, we don't want robots to help us with our lives, but somebody's going to do it.
Yeah, and that's that for me is the big concern, is the fact that I see this as an inevitability, but I see it as a tragic inevitability, because we're not appreciating the full breadth of human experience as part of the journey. I read an article by a guy by the name of Rod Mason, who's an Aboriginal lawman, and he was talking about the fact that he could trace his it's a wonderful article. It's actually in this the August edition of Granta magazine. I'll put it up. But he was talking about the fact that through oral through the oral tradition, he can trace his family back from between 15 and 25,000 years. But the level that he's able to relate his family experience is sort of the way that I talk about my my grandparents and that. But actually, if you want like a really good example of this, is amongst children. Children know the nursery rhymes and stories that I think, Matt, you and I were talking about this as well. They know the stories and nursery rhymes that can go back, hundreds and in some cases thousands of years. And they don't know how to read. It's all transferred through an oral tradition. But the thing is, with natural language processing works on the basis that it converts the voice to text, to the Latin alphabet. It is the colonization of language, and it is also through that one of the things that I'm looking at is the first written book in Zulu, in the Zulu language, was actually a translation of the Old Testament and a couple of grammatical rules. It paid no attention whatsoever to any of the cultural artifacts or cultural heritage of the Zulu language. It completely wiped it out in favor of producing just a written text and rules. And this technology is based on this framework, and is moving way far without making any changes to this framework. This idea of being able to use an oral tradition, to be able to recognize features of the land, to be able to talk visually about things in a way that has such familiarity and resilience is just not there. And the big question is that if we continue to develop these technologies using these systems, which are deeply problematic, what are we missing about our humanity? And that's why I don't think that it's possible for us to, I think there are many reasons why it's not possible for us to create a human artificial intelligence. It's because we have excluded huge segments of our humanity in the process of doing it. And that is, it's a pity. And I believe that people who do not have the technical background to be able to take part in this debate actually need to have a place. There needs to be some way of us being able to come together to talk about this stuff.
What do you see the role of oral, talking and storytelling in this sort of idea? I mean, going back, I've got a friend. Great friend. Used to work with him, and he was magic in making up stories. We used to get sort of people that phoned in as a wrong number, and he'd just go off on some random idea, like the Glowworm Lighthouse Preservation Society, and the Earthworm Society. And it'd get somebody that said, what's that all about? And he'd go on into this elaborate story, which he could make up on the fly, as he goes along. And if we go back in history, there were travelers from, maritime travelers, seafarers that come back, and they would tell stories down the pub about giants and monsters that they'd seen. I think nowadays we'd all accept that as complete fabrication. But they used to do it to as a form of living, or a supplement, income supplement, to get a pint of ale or a bed for the night, or for some other reason. I think if something is written down, it seems to be less subject to variation, as sort of like oral traditions are. There's classic stories, isn't it? How it changes down the line. Is it Chinese whispers? The game.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a place, and I'd be interested in your take on that, Cato. One thing for John. Hold on, sorry. I've got sort of a bit interested. One of my sons is a primary school teacher with an English literature background. And him and I have been talking, and also another friend of mine that is heavily into computer programming and technology. And he was saying about the art of storytelling using the microbit. And he was saying, get the kids to make up a story and use the microbit. So even if it's just got a sad face or a happy face, tell a story using the microbit, which is another sort of like link to technology, and I think having an artistic input into it. So it might be something for you to consider with your what were they, the Kent STEAMettes? No, I've got that wrong, haven't I? Sorry, but you know what I mean.
The Morse Ninja STEAMettes.
Oh, the Morse Ninja STEAMettes. Yeah, brilliant. Sorry, Cato, over to you now. Sorry.
No, I mean, I would say on the one hand that a written tradition is also subject to stories changing over time and fabrication, but that, I think that definitely needs to be borne in mind. But the fact is that societies that practice these that do practice a strong oral tradition, and in fact, to the extent that we can see, again, I would refer to the one that we see on a daily basis, which is amongst children, and the integrity of the nursery rhymes and the stories that get passed and told across generations there. But the fact is that societies that do practice a strong oral tradition have, first of all, they've got the number of people sharing the story almost acts as a natural safeguard in those situations, and that's where that resilience sits. But also they have institutional makeups that are suited to those. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about them personally to be able to speak for that, except for the fact that you know from what I have read, this resilience is there, and there must be a reason for why it's there. So I'm certainly not advocating that we ditch the written tradition at all. I would say what I'm more concerned about is questioning whether, well, not is saying that we should value these different systems equally, and that actually people coming from different systems have an equal claim to being able to use this technology as it's being put out there. I mean, the fact of the matter is that actually more and more we are being required to use these systems in order to be able to access not just cultural things like streaming music and stuff like that, but actually things like healthcare benefits and that. And a lot of the way that these societies function, or our societies function generally, is about how we communicate and how we interact and how we feel comfortable interacting with things. And the concern is that if we develop technology in a way that does not actually include various people and communities, then what we're actually looking at is further marginalizing them and pushing them away to the extent that the systems become useless, or we put them in a position of harm. And the thing is that we need to all have the agency to be able to contribute to these systems. I mean, for me, I'm certainly not in a mission to try and fix AI or machine learning. I'm not. Yeah. I'm pretty down on solutions in general. I like the idea of further problematizing things and unpacking them, and seeing where that goes. Yeah, that's.
Have you come across the computer program ELIZA?
I have heard of it. Yes. Can you remind me what? Because yeah.
It was out. When was it, Andy? 70s, 80s. When it first made an appearance.
Yeah,
it was
60s and 70s.
70s. Yeah, it was claimed to be sort of like artificial intelligence. It was written, in a basic program.
Yes, I do know this. Yeah. Yes.
And it was just basically a linear program which just sort of looked for keywords and then reflected that back. I mean, that fooled a lot of people, including some sort of like professional psychologists. Yeah. Again, it does bring into question where I started this is what actually is intelligence. What do we mean when we talk about intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Well, I mean, the thing is that it actually becomes, it goes beyond, it almost goes beyond perception. One of the things that I found really interesting about the way that computers recognize pictures is that they use the bitmap system. The image gets broken up into a grid, and then points get awarded to the grid depending on things like the opacity of it, and it works in the same principle as neocognition, that it tries to identify a basic shape and then moves that up to higher concepts until the point that it actually says the basic shape, given the angles and that is a dog. Whereas with words actually follow the principle of vectors. Sentences follow the principles of vectors, which makes sense, actually. It's what happens between two full stops. And then you look at the words and you look at the relationship of those words. But if you take the example that they have in this book, things like positive words, for instance, like bright and happy and charm, and then what you do is you start looking at how those words actually pair up with other words. So bright actually then starts becoming about light. And what it comes down to at the end of the day is that you can't actually work with a two-dimensional plane to build up these taxonomies. And in fact, even a three-dimensional plane doesn't work to build up these taxonomies because of the directions that the various associations go. So you're actually looking at something that is multi-dimensional, completely beyond human perception. when you start trying to build a system to understand language. And that's language based entirely on words. I went to a talk at the Royal Geographic Society, also must have been about 8 years ago now, and they had a thing called World Roots, and they were where they had gone around and they'd recorded folk music in the fields. They'd gone to Peru, and they had to the Andes, and they'd recorded some music of a group of people singing in the Andes, and they'd gone all the way to Ethiopia, done the same. And what I found really interesting about the program was that they had done sound recordings exclusively. I bought the CD and it was great. But actually, the thing is that for those recordings, the dance, the setting, the outfits, all of those things are absolutely crucial to being able to understand what the music is about. And when you remove those elements and you stick purely to the sound, you're actually getting a very small piece of the picture. And this is the thing about, we talk about the ambiguities of what is intelligence, but actually when we start looking at the ambiguities of what is language, that is, that's a completely different ball game. And it's fascinating. You can see why I don't want to solve this, because I don't think anyone could. But there's, but it's just such a fascinating area.
Yeah, I mean, I love music, especially from different cultures. I mean, I've got my limits, but yeah, I wouldn't go for John Cage listening to 766 years of silence, that's, or even his shortened version, sort of 4 minutes 33 seconds or whatever it is. That doesn't appeal to me. But the different sounds, different instruments, some electronic, quite a bit of electronic music, sort of from synthesized rather than sort of the sampled sort of music, sampled sounds. So I love sort of like African rhythms, the different rhythms, the different sort of, if I describe them as natural instruments, made from, the local sort of materials, the trees and things, rather than if you take an orchestra or a band where they've got, sort of drums, guitars, the keyboards that are, made by professionals, but just locally sort of put together and make some music. I think that's fascinating. I heard it described many years ago by a lecture or presentation that I went to about music and technology, that music is described as the universal language. Now, we're talking about sort of words and maybe other expressions that we all understand. We know we've got a meaning. We know what the meanings are of most of the words that everybody has spoken tonight, if not all of the words. But music sort of hits a different sort of side of us. It hits the emotional side of us, I think. And like singing, I mean, I love a bit of love a bit of opera. A nice passion opera. It stirs something up inside me. I think, yeah, go for it, girl, or whatever. Can really get into it. And I like some, sort of musical sort of productions as well with the and so, I mean, some records, it makes me cry or it makes me very happy, So I think, again, what do we mean by language is another sort of like, I think a multi-dimensional facet to, or has a multi-dimensional facet to it. And maybe that comes into, I don't know if it comes into intelligence, but you may have to have some intelligence to make some music, but then you could argue what's music. I mean, if you take a cricket rubbing its back legs together to make a sound, is that intelligent? I don't know. Or a bird singing to attract its mate or whatever, is that, does that require intelligence, or is it something more innate, inbuilt into it? Anyway, sorry, I think what's his name, Matt, wants to pull this together.
Yeah, so I'm just going to spotlight myself to bring a pause to the fascinating discussion. So thank you very much, Melanie and Cato, for your fascinating talks.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah, really good, really thought-provoking and inspirational, and caused a lot of discussion for both. So thank you very much again for your time.
Yeah.
Really good. However, now is the time to return to the magical mystery item. And I hope you've had a little bit of time to consider what they are.
It's a pot pipe, Coke pipe.
No, it's neither of those. So unless there's any pressing questions, just for a last minute clarification before a final guess, I'm going to reveal the answer.
We've got some music.
I need a drum roll. Can anyone deliver a drum roll?
I'm not touching my computer in case it shuts down again.
Oh, that's close enough. Hang on.
So
there we go.
I knew it was that.
I can't read the writing.
See, now you say you knew it was that.
I can't read the writing. It's too blurred for me.
Well, I'll discuss it. So this item is for sliding wires into conduit. So you take the tube out of the middle, the 45-degree thing. That slots into it, and you can turn it around to line 2 slots up so that you can feed the wire into the middle, and then you turn that cylinder around to lock it in place. You shove the rocket-shaped end up the conduit and force it along the conduit, leaving the wire inside.
Can I just say I'm really glad my life did not depend on this question. That is,
Does she get very excited about conduit and getting cables into it easily? So this is the mystery object. If anyone has a mystery object they would like to put forward for next month, we're all ears here. So far we've had a USB powered hook, some kind of plastic welding device, a drum machine stroke umbrella, and an umbrella made out of air, which is still my favorite. It's a shame that didn't happen. And now a conduit stuffer. So it's a heady mix to compete with for any future suggestions. But I'm always open to more. It's surprisingly difficult to find mystery items that are really good fun, but I think we've nailed it so far. Okay, so maybe I should offer a conduit stuffer as the little trinket that we offer our speakers. But maybe that's for future. But right now, the prize that is available to speakers is a unique 3D printed The Geekery logo, and it comes personalized with some writing embedded in the base. So a truly unique item. I know it's very irresistible.
That's nice.
And please tell everyone that this is what the speakers get, because then we'll be trampled with offers of speakers, I'm sure.
Excellent. I will be collecting mine on the school run tomorrow.
I need a little bit more notice to produce this. This is not really a trinket. This is a carefully constructed, takes a while to create piece of awesome. Okay.
Awesomeness.
Yeah. So if you would like your own personalized trinket, please let me know by some method, and I shall create it especially for you as speakers.
Can we choose the color?
No.
No. Well, I am running a little bit short of yellow. I've got lots of green and pink.
Ah, excellent.
Cool.
I'll take it in pink, actually. Dervla would be furious if she discovered.
I'll give it a go. That filament's a little bit old, so yeah, I'll do a special edition in pink since you've asked so nicely.
Excellent.
So
Okay.
how do you interact with your 3D printer? Is that via CorelDRAW?
No, it's not, thankfully. Actually, I use 2 pieces of software for CAD. For simple things, I go to Tinkercad, and it's aimed at sort of education. It's aimed at kids.
Yeah. No, well, yes. I'll talk for
Dead
the other
easy.
people, yeah.
And very easy to remember how to do stuff, and it's great for adding a filament, something you've downloaded from Thingiverse, or just to knock up a fairly basic shape by adding primitives. But for things like this, where you've got a bit of a loft going on, Fusion 360 is my tool of choice for that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh dear. Oh, excuse me.
But not CorelDRAW. No,
Not CorelDRAW. No.
Putting all those floppy disks in to get it to load takes an age.
I'm sure there's a faster way of loading it and installing it nowadays.
No. Okay. Oh, hang on. Yep. Right. Yes. So that was the mystery item. Someone did get that actually. Right at the beginning. Meat Lotion, who is still here. The top prize goes to Meat Lotion for correctly guessing what this device was for. So that was I'm very impressed actually. My guess with it was that it was some kind of boat rudder type affair, but I was completely wrong, as you all know now. Okay, just check the chat.
What prize does Meat Lotion get?
Just our temporary adulation.
Bragging
really.
rights.
That's all that's available, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Gravy bowl. Yeah, nice.
Okay, right. So that's it. Next month, I do have one speaker lined up, and it is there's an animation studio based in Margate called A&C. And they make TV adverts, stop motion type video, and they recently did or maybe it's about a year ago, but they did a project where they got a games controller which was in the form of a glove, and turned that into a controller of their stop motion software, and that was using it was a Feather microprocessor to turn it into a Bluetooth keyboard, basically, to help them. So they're going to talk about that, and hopefully give us a bit of insight into that stop motion animation world and the technical stuff they do with dollied cameras and automated movement of things as they're going frame by frame. Sounds like an incredibly tedious activity to me, but quite interesting. But there is a slot open for another speaker that I'm hoping to fill. But again, as well as mystery objects, if you would like, if there are any speakers out there that you think we would all be interested in, or you particularly want to put forward, please do make those suggestions. Also, next month, it's with the lockdown hopefully staying away, I'm thinking of making this a bit more of a hybrid affair, so keeping the Zoom element but inviting people to come down to the geekery to try and be a bit more social here, and hopefully the hybrid nature will work, and hopefully people will want to come down here. But that's a bit of a change that might happen. I'm a bit nervous about it, to be honest. Meeting people in the real world is still a little bit weird. Nothing personal. It's for everyone that I feel like that. But maybe we'll all get over that by next month.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe we should all meet up on Margate Beach. Yeah. On a Saturday weekend or something.
Yeah. Sneak into Turner and plug an Ethernet cable in for a bit of guaranteed.
Haven't you got a satellite system?
No.
Yeah. You have to get John on the case.
Yes.
And the local radio hams to get something up on,
maybe
do a bit of ATV.
Maybe we sort of encode the video stream in Morse code and get some very anyway. So this is the part where I look at some news, and I don't have any news.
Okay.
I'm trying to
I've
Not
got some
listened to news
news.
actually.
I've got some news. I put in the chat on the digital art. Keeping on that theme, next Thursday we've got a Zoom talk. We've got two actually. Lily Hunter Green and the Essex STEAMettes doing a beehive virus coding. This was before COVID. She started doing bees and viruses, and she's now got the Essex STEAMettes in for part 2. So they've been looking at a little bit of virus simulation in Python, social distancing, and they've also been coding drones in Python to make them fly and flip and things like that. But what's quite interesting is we've mostly not met. So it's pretty much all been done over Zoom. We actually coded the drones over Zoom. So that's quite interesting.
Very interesting collaboration.
Then I'm doing a little bit, I put it in the chat, I'm doing a little bit about trying to recruit some people to help. And then you've got your very own Meat Lotion, who's here doing some ANSI art. So he's talking about ANSI art, and depending on how long we have, he might even talk about PBSs. So I've just put the Meetup link, and that's, everyone's welcome to come along.
Are you about to put that in the chat for us?
Yeah, I'll put it in. I can put it in again.
Lovely. The STEM Ambassador organisation is holding a science jamboree from the 7th of June to the 11th of June. And it's still open. Well, you just you go to the STEM site and register your interest, which is their next kind of their next program, if you like. And shortly after that, they've got a program of getting involved with your local school, which seems quite interesting as well. But if I just try and show you the science jamboree, there's an East Kent science jamboree by the look of this, but this looks like it was last year. Oh, let me go to the right window. I don't know if you can read this, but I will share all of these links that I've been collecting on tabs so far. So it's a whole week of daily live talks and activities and so on. So I would recommend, the STEM Ambassador organisation is wonderful, great way for adults to get involved with inspiring and helping up the next generations. And this looks really cool. And this is the second week of June, and that's coming up pretty soon. And there's a Team Moon. Yep, free online, mostly it looks like via Teams.
Yeah.
And after Melanie's talk, we have to click on Team Moon, of course. Now we're traveling back to the Apollo moon missions.
I'm afraid I'm going to duck off now. So I just want to say goodbye to everybody and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I will see you guys next month.
Excellent.
Just up the road. I might come and invade your space, Matt.
Wonderful.
Cheers.
Right. Good night, Cato.
Good night,
Cato.
Matt, did you mention there was something going on at Margate School a while back, or possibly something over half term?
Well, during the summer holidays, I know that Genetic Moo, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, they're running some sessions for children in the Margate School. I'm involved with something, I think it's on the 27th of July. So they're asking people with of a technical nature to do something simple like a 5-minute talk about what they do, perhaps, or some kind of workshop, or anything you like that is related to coding and something that children might be interested in during that summer holiday. But really, that's something Genetic Mood could talk about much better than I could.
Okay.
I'm just responding to their call to action, really. So yeah, I can't really say anything more than that. Maybe we'll ask Genetic Mood to talk about that next month.
Ooh.
But thanks for the reminder.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. So really, this is the point where we move to the social side of the meetup after the talks. So thank you very much for being here again. It's always lovely to see double numbers again. That always seemed like such a struggle to get to double numbers. Now it's the norm. So maybe by next week it'll be always in triple numbers. Who knows? But yeah, great. Lovely to see you all. And now the floor is yours, as it were. I'll be particularly interested, Andy, what the we've said a little bit, but what the Southend STEAMettes maybe could do to collaborate more with the Thanet STEAMettes. I think.
Well, they're actually they're the Essex STEAMettes. So North Essex to Southend is quite a distance as well, and we've got a couple who come from Scotland and London.
Pakistan, isn't it, or Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so next week we'll be doing some activities in the morning, and the girls are going to be running that, and we open that up to everyone. And because we're online, we've had some people come from, well, quite a few people have come from Sri Lanka, and yeah, we did Moonhack. We had 200 people signed up, and I asked for the time zones after a while because I could see on their email they were coming from Australia and New Zealand and places completely the other side of the world when, you know, we would all be asleep and they'd be awake. So in the end, I just sent out a link, said, here are the instructions. You can do it yourself, or you can join us. I think it was 11 o'clock our time. And we had 35 devices logged on. So maybe we had about 40 people actually doing the workshops in total, but that was quite interesting. So
must be very encouraging to get such relatively not large numbers and a global interest as well. How great!
I mean, it was quite worrying to actually organise it because I was thinking, let's do a 3 o'clock in the morning meet up for the people in Australia, but couldn't really do that. So. Yeah, so me and Ed coming over to the Thanet tech meetup, so that's just small fry really.
Would you come directly via sea, or would you go more in a?
Well, I was talking about. Zoom just makes it easy. Yeah, I was meaning Zoom, so that's why we come quite regularly, and we advertise it out. And, we go to Preston Raspberry Jam as well. So the Preston Raspberry Jam on Zoom became kind of a national Raspberry Jam. So the Essex STEAMettes have been doing lots of talks there as well. So they've been quite well known then. And they do a little breakout like this. They do breakout rooms and have a little social. They call it the Jam Jar. So it's the Raspberry Jam and then the Jam Jar. So I mean, I'm like you, and Preston's also thinking about how do we go to hybrid events, because we actually have a meetup in Southend on a Monday evening. Whilst we're all on Zoom, it's quite easy for me to log off one computer and log on to a different computer so that I can go and help the Essex STEAMettes in Preston. But if I'm physically in a building in Southend, Preston wants to carry on. Luckily, we're in the old Waterworks, and the old Waterworks has a room, and the room is actually a cinema room. And then there's a big art gallery room. So potentially we could have the Preston Jam being broadcast onto a massive onto a massive screen, and then there could be someone in the other room actually taking part. So I don't know how that would work. They don't know how it's going to work, but it will be interesting. We'll be finding out shortly how all these hybrid events work, and you know, if they work as a Zoom with people around, or if the people around are going to ignore the people on Zoom. So
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it was something we'd always spoken about. You know, let's join up some Raspberry Jams, and it never happened. But because of the pandemic, we all joined up, and you know, Preston Jam has been kind of the centre, the monthly Preston Jam, and it's been great. And I've sent the Essex STEAMettes along, and Alan O'Donoghue runs it. They really appreciate them going up. So
excellent. Well, there are lots of benefits from having the Zoom thing, like getting people like Alan O'Donoghue, and you know, people that don't live anywhere near Thanet coming to talk to us. You know, it's a great benefit. But having that one-on-one or that group situation where you're actually right in front of each other is something that you can't beat. You know, you can't work on an animatronic chimp's head over Zoom.
No.
But I'm hoping that we'll find a way to at least have some people working on the chimp that you can see just up there.
Andy will have to. Oh yeah. If you've got the hardware, have you got it? I'll backtrack. I'm talking about 3 different things. I know my mind sort of like is going there, but I can only speak about one thing at one time. If you had the hardware all linked up to some internet service, like the Internet of Things, it's possible you could do that. Now, I know some of us, Andy's sort of Essex STEAMettes, have been working on MQTT, whatever it is, I don't know the blessed name, and controlling things via the internet. And they're in collaboration with, I think,
Andy Stanford Clark,
who's the technical director of IBM down in the Isle of Wight, who has or is developing an Internet of Things enabled sort of a granny monitor, where you have a device that plugs into an electric socket, and then that plugs into, say, an electric kettle or any appliance, and it detects when granny or somebody is making a cup of tea, if we're talking about a kettle application, and sends a message over the IoT to Andy or whatever. He's got he's done a little model. One of his sons is a policeman, and so when he knows, he's got a little model of a policeman on his desk, and he's got a traffic light system on it, you know, sort of green, amber and red, and he knows that, you know, green is a safe time to call, amber, yeah, he's probably just going to bed or just getting up, and red, he's working, so don't, unless it's an emergency, don't call. And so this thing gets updated. So he is quite into, you know, controlling things over the internet. It might be what state of development is the hardware in, Matt?
It is just a chimp's head at the moment.
No motors in it.
Oh no, it's full of motors and sensors. It's just we don't have the remote control that controls the chimp's head.
Why not?
Dan had a brief couple of hours of dismantling it.
So why don't you have the control?
It was donated as head only.
So
Okay.
really, we've got to go in and I guess pull out the inputs to each of the individual servos, and we'll take them onto some sort of board.
So is it servos or that the sort of technology, motor technology that's in there? How many?
Yeah.
I would imagine there's it would be more than half a dozen. I've found the manual online. It can move its eyebrows, eyes, ears, mouth.
Wow.
It has a voice.
Wow.
Lots of things going on in
What
there.
sort of voice? That ooh, 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 voice, or is it
Almost
hello,
that,
my name
almost.
is Reginald the chimpanzee?
No, it's the former, unfortunately. At the moment, it's the former.
Oh, on voices, sorry, quick one. Today we spoke to Alexa in whisper mode, and it's really weird. If you've got an Amazon Echo, say enter whisper mode, and then if you whisper to your Echo, it will answer back in whispers as well. It's
my God,
it's quite a loud whisper. It's a really weird sound.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I was going to tell you a joke.
Whisper me a joke.
Yeah.
So Dan, do you go down to where Matt is physically at the Geek Room?
Yeah, well, Matt's actually my customer on one of my projects. So we've been actually able to get together a couple of times as well in a very COVID safe way. But it's quite nice. And in between lockdowns was when I first met Matt, and we had attended a couple of the Thanet Tech group meetups where we started having a poke round with the chimpanzee. So strange things you come across, don't you? And have a play.
Yeah. So if you can get your your chimp's head working over MQTT, that's the kind of thing we want to do, and then we can wave our glove around and
excellent, because the chimpanzee can be on Zoom, can't it, on its own?
Yeah.
Log in its own camera, and everyone can interact with it.
Well, so that was kind of like the idea of doing the drones over Zoom. In the end, we just kind of copied and pasted, and we put it onto something like Pastebin. We did it that way, but the more advanced version, and probably when we get in person and start doing things in person, is to get everything IoT'd up with MQTT, and then over Zoom, as Ed was saying, with the Kent STEAMettes, the Thanet STEAMettes, or the Morse Ninja STEAMettes, then that'll be something which is really cool. But also we want to get people like Matt and Dan and people around the UK to actually do more advanced things and say, here's something simple which the girls have done, but where could you take it? You could take it to a chimp head, or maybe you take it somewhere, as Ed was saying, like the environmental monitoring. Maybe we have some real-time environmental monitoring over MQTT and we can react. So one person's got his garden IoT'd up, and he uses MQTT, and he's been quite helpful with the STEAMettes, and he's inspired them quite a lot. So he'll probably come on board as part of that. Here's a project I've done, and he's a lot more advanced, and he's probably built his own PCB for it. And
who's that?
That's Dr. Footleg. He's got his
latest robot on there. He's got caterpillar tracks. He looks like he's 3D printed a load of caterpillar tracks. The things are going round like a flaming hamster in a wheel. These tractors, these caterpillar tracks, whizzing round on his latest robot.
I've got a quick show and tell.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, I started talking about concertina reeds and electric pickups and things like that. So not made the concertina yet, too expensive. But
Matt, can you spotlight him? Thanks.
Listen, can I share the screen?
Yes.
Sorry, let's get me a web browser back up. And oh yeah, did anyone hear about the big data center fire in March?
No.
Yeah, in France.
Yeah. I had an inquiry from someone today who said that they lost their website in the fire. I was like, what fire? Wow. So right, let me.
I didn't hear about it. Don't worry.
So I thought I'd just quickly try and get some electric pickup, and so I thought I'll get some. Can you see my screen?
See black at the moment. It says started screen sharing.
Oh yes, everything's paused. You've all frozen for me. I might give up on that if that's. Oh, here we are. Right. Anything working?
Oh, right.
Yeah, that just took a while. Okay, so this device here is a pickup. So it's got a coil in it, magnet in it, and those 12 circles there. You think there might be like metal slugs to help sort of manage your electrical field. they're not. I don't know if you can still see me, but they're just this little tiny bit of cardboard. It's really not what
There's nothing to
expected.
it. It's just a
Yeah.
foil covered cardboard.
But that device would normally fit on your guitar under there. So if you've got steel strings, you've got a bit of a pickup, and I thought I'll go with that because it's got a little bit of volume control and already cabled up for me. But
does it come? Is that for £12.86? Does that all come together as a kit?
Yeah, that's why I went for it.
The pickup amplifier and some little looks like a wireless control box.
It won't be an amplifier. It'll just be a pot to sort of attenuate rather than amplify, because there's no power source for it, so it's all completely passive.
It's not wireless then, is it? I'm not.
No.
It's completely wired to the amp or whatever.
That's it. Yeah. So there's a phono plug there. And then I had to go and get myself a steel reeded harmonica, because pretty much all harmonicas, the cheap ones, are brass or copper, so not magnetic material or anything like that. So I was a bit upset about spending 40 quid on something I was gonna go and open up, but did it anyway. And then, so here is the harmonica. So there it is.
Give us a tune.
Well, I can't play the harmonica. That's the best I could do for you there.
Yeah, we start a band because I can play like that.
Excellent. Inside the harmonica, I should try and turn on some lights if I can see with my remote controls. Inside the harmonica, you've got a whole bunch of reeds. So there's these are recessed reeds on one side, so they'll be like when you're sucking air through, they'll go. On the other side, you've got the reeds on top of the instrument. So the square bits you can probably see are where it's riveted onto the device. Let's turn that off. So yeah, can play. Now let's see what happens when we put them both together.
It's working.
So one amplifier. I'm not quite sure if you're going to be able to hear this. I hope so. So
turn it up a bit.
I've opened the device up and I've taken the magnet out, and not a lot happening. But if I add the magnet, just straight away, even just touching it, stuff's happening. It's all very magnetic, and it's still in the case. So let's try arrange it like this. Let's get a bit more volume and see if I can position it well, please. Could you hear that?
Yeah, it definitely was obviously amplified and a bit distorted by it as well.
Well, it is now.
Okay, so my first question is why?
Yeah, well, why do we do a lot of what we do?
I don't know.
Curiosity. So that was
brilliant.
It was just to prove that it could sort of work. I did go out looking for electric harmonicas and things like that, and I've found one device which was a light sensing device. So as the reeds vibrate, they'll cut the light, and then some sort of amplification going on there. Oh,
is it? Are you a musician? Obviously not a harmonica player.
Not a harmonica player. No, I play one of these. So
that's close.
Yeah,
it's got reeds.
Yeah, it's got reeds in it, and there'll be steel reeds in there. So that's part of the idea, is eventually to see if I can electrify a concertina.
That's a big step forward there.
Yeah. Where do you get to play that? I mean, are you in a group? What sort of music do you play?
I'm a Morris dancer. So
bit of that. But you can't play that whilst you're dancing, though, can you?
No. Yes, if I'm not dancing a particular dance. But down the pub and the Tartar Frigate in Broadstairs on a Wednesday night is a very good place to go. When we used to have sessions, I used to good few hours down there. It's really nice, and you just rock up, and they're very, very kind and supportive, because I'm not very good, but they're very, very encouraging. But the reason for bringing this up as well was, so the harmonica would have some plates either side of it to sort of protect your lips and so on. And so I'm wondering, Matt, if we might be able to come up with some way of sort of
3D printed mount.
replicate, some sort of 3D printed mount to then take a coil, or even sort of print a bobbin to wind the coil on. And you know, we've talked in the past about it's quite therapeutic to watch like woodwork videos on YouTube. There are videos of coil winding for electric guitar pickups, and the machines they build, it's fantastic. The machines they build for winding coils. So it's like a new genre of YouTube videos.
Have you thought about putting a microphone in front of it instead of magnetic pickups?
That's the obvious solution, isn't it?
You would probably enjoy that Fraser Merrick. I noticed when I was mentioning it, Matt was sort of like getting it up on the Google thing. But he's into sort of like sound, and does, well, like all artists, does weird things with bits, you know.
But so
pushes the boundaries and does weird things that nobody else does.
Yeah,
just because he
just
can or she
seeing
can.
what you can. But the other thing would be at a music session, unfortunately, in the concertina, the sound goes to the people that are next to you because of just the way the instrument is. So I can't hear all the bad bum notes that I'm hitting, whereas they can.
Good,
whereas if I could electrify it, I could I could do it with a microphone as well. But I could have a little earpiece, so I could hear what I'm doing. But it was just a curiosity. But while messing around with this at the weekend, there was something popped up, conversation with my father-in-law. So he used to have radio controlled boats and things like that, and he started explaining to me how tones were used to control servos on the devices, and often they would be tuned reeds. So I thought it was fantastic. So
what was that?
So a tone would be transmitted. The receiver would pick it up, but it would then essentially play the tone. I don't know. It will amplify the signal, the audio signal, through a coil, and that coil would then cause a change in magnetic field, and reeds would start to vibrate. And if they're tuned to the right frequency that matched the tone, they would vibrate excessively, and they would then start making a circuit because they'd be coated with, I guess, copper or something, and they would start making and breaking a circuit, and that could then be used to activate a servo. So I just thought it was a fantastic mechanical output.
I've never heard of that before. Signal. That's really interesting.
So we might have to try and get some videos of it or something.
That is really old tech.
Yeah.
I mean, even I don't remember that being it. I think I've heard of it before, but I've never seen a system in my younger days.
But I think it's quite a nice. It could be quite a nice visualization of, you know, sort of frequency detection or something like that to actually get a bit of metal wobbling in response to a tone or something like that.
It saves running wires.
Well, I mean, but there are much easier ways of doing it. Again, as Ed was saying, why am I doing what I'm doing? There's also easier ways to get a signal from one place to another.
Well, I suppose it's sort of low frequency Wi-Fi, but analog style, isn't it?
Oh, so it was still being transmitted, I guess FM over FM, but then at the other end it'll be demodulated audio. And I just thought it was quite interesting.
You could always try bouncing a laser off of each individual reed.
And then bounce it off the moon and then back down onto a oscillogram.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Quite a big radio controlled boat, then, isn't it?
Lovely.
Anyway, so Matt, I'm going to see you early next month, aren't I? So I'll bring this along, and maybe we can have a quick chat about whether it's even, well, we already know it's a silly idea, but how much of a silly idea it would be to try and 3D print something.
Sounds like a brilliant idea. Why not?
Yeah, you say that it's a silly idea. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with silly ideas, you know. Today it might be a silly idea. In the future it might be something that is, so what Melanie was saying tonight, she's sort of like well, I wouldn't say she spent years, but she spent a good while adjusting, getting her technique right, adjusting her apparatus. And in a way, you're doing the same thing for, whatever reason. You want to get some, feedback, some personal feedback from your musical instruments, which is difficult to do using a microphone because you're picking up a lot of, the extraneous background noise.
I think
so.
As well,
you're coming up. I mean, it might be of use in, for other musicians when they're playing.
I think
live.
it's just a demonstrator as well of a bit of physics, of how something works. So that's also why I do it, I think. But I'll probably need 2 pickups, one for the top, one for the bottom as well. So yeah, might end up with quite a big harmonica just to bolt and stuff to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A brick.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But can't you get a cheap sort of concertina or whatever the thing is that you is it a concertina?
What the squeeze box? Yeah.
The squeeze box thing. Yeah.
So I've got a couple. One's lent to someone. The cheap one's about 180 quid. So this one I've got here was £1,400. So yeah, they're expensive. They're not many people making them. And there's another one actually. So my one is made by a guy called Anthony James, and if you search for him on YouTube, he's got videos of him making them, and it's another nice sort of video to watch of what it's sort of I can't remember what you call a saw, but the saw where he's sort of activating it with his feet. It's got pedals on it to just almost like a band saw, but a manual band saw.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's another project there. Make your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I love. I'm not a collector of old books, but I do like old technology books. I've got a couple in my collection. 1930s or whatever. One's about electrical technology, as it was called back then. It has some fascinating things in it, like how to wind coils in different sort of. I wouldn't say it's an elaborate sort of, a comprehensive treatment of it, of coil winding techniques, but it shows, there's skills, there are arts that are lost because there's a machine that does it now.
Yeah.
You're right. I think it was you that was saying earlier. There's some fantastic machinery to wind those sort of those pickups. Have you come across do you know what I mean by a toroid coil?
That's
toroid.
What you normally have in a
donut
transformer, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, like the donut. Winding those. How do you wind those? The machinery to wind that.
Yeah, because it's going all the way around, isn't it? Is it using like the equivalent of a sewing machine to sort of?
I think basically, they got one come up and one come down and that. But I'm not mechanically. I don't have a mechanical brain. Mechanically, don't have a mechanical brain. Full stop. But not one that sort of like thinks mechanically. I think electronically. My brain works.
These coil winding though, they're not all really elaborate. One I saw where someone had used a fishing reel and like the bottom of a fishing rod. And using the eyelets to like run the cable down. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. I lost the train of thought. What I was saying. Yeah, but it's I think it's picking up and following on from what Cato was saying in some respects. We become computer technology. We're so dependent on technology. Not just computers, robots and other machinery. I mean, when I've gone into schools and talked to kids about robots, one of the first questions I ask them, well, what do you mean by a robot? Is it one of these mechanical arms that sit fixed, or is it something more like iRobot, a cyborg or whatever? And then again, because my background is in medical, and also is to do with movement and that. So what about if you integrate technology with the human body? There you go. What is that? What stage do you become human or machine? And I forget what the current price is, but I remember reading something must have been about 5 years ago, in one of the tabloid newspapers that for just over $1 million, you could virtually replace all the parts in the body apart from the brain. You can certainly, sort of get a metal frame to replace your skeleton with. You wouldn't need necessarily a skin covering. But the organs, most of those can be replaced now. Have an artificial kidney, an artificial heart, artificial lungs.
$1 million seems quite cheap for all that.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at it, but but you can't replace your brain. But people have been talking about it. There's
That's cool.
What were you saying about winding videos being a thing?
They're distracting. Anyway, I should make a move. It's getting a bit late, so thank you very much, everyone. But I now have a new class of coil winding videos to go and
toroidal ones
as well.
You found a niche within a niche.
Yeah. Wow, fantastic, excellent, Brian.
But it's like I was going back, instrument making, musical instrument making. I mean, there's not many people that do that now, as you say.
No, and definitely not for concertinas.
Yeah, I've got a friend. He's an old-fashioned, traditional sort of like cabinet maker, and he said, he can't get the students. They don't want to do that now. If they want to do woodwork and carpentry, they're expecting to go onto a building site, not like make cabinets and wardrobes. So, that's all the cabinet making is done by IKEA. It's flat packed, MDF. But Adrian makes these things out of proper wood. Real wood, trees, they're not being compressed and chucked up.
So that's why people are looking for older furniture, isn't it? That they know has been made.
I mean, he's getting on in years, and he's often he wants to keep the tradition going, but he can't get nobody wants to do that. None of the young kids.
No.
They don't want to do that. They want to go and earn money on the building site. Yeah. But
So
anyway, I'll let you go.
A level of proficiency, wouldn't they, before they could actually start earning any money?
Yeah, I'm coughing now, so I've been obviously talking too much.
I think I'm going to go as well. So if anyone wants to pop in next week to our Southend Tech Meetup, we've got some more digital art and hear a little bit about what the Essex STEAMettes have been doing as well.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what they've been doing.
That's this page here that you can see in my background down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it on Meetup. So you don't need to sign up. I've put it really obvious way to join the Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Are you doing a Zoom meeting this Monday, Andy? It's bank holiday or not?
Yeah, we do one on Monday as well.
I may or may not be around for that, but
yeah, it's easier just to carry them on even though it's a bank holiday, and we'll also be doing some morning activities as I mentioned. So,
morning?
Morning.
What? Who's died?
No one's died. 10:30. 10:30 morning. See you, Dan.
I'll see you later.
See you, Dan. All right. What morning activities? I must have been asleep. Maybe it's when my computer crashed, so I was doing my supper or something.
Yeah, half term. So it's in half term.
Well, it's bloody bank holiday Monday.
Yeah,
I suppose it's still in half term.
Yeah.
What are you doing on that coding?
Yeah, coding and maybe some 3D printing, maybe Tinkercad as well.
How are you going to do that via Zoom?
No, we do everything else via Zoom. No,
3 hours.
No, they'll design stuff. Matt did a Tinkercad over Zoom, didn't you?
You got to do something that prints fairly quickly, though. You'd have all the girls.
No, we won't actually print it.
Be like a John Cage, 366 years of 766
No, we'll just
years of
design it.
silence.
We'll design it. We won't print it. So we'll call it 3D design then with Tinkercad.
Okay.
So Matt, you did that. How did your one go?
Well, I didn't teach, or did I? No, I did encourage people to go to Tinkercad. So I did a series of 3 courses. One was what is 3D printing, what's it all about, and the second one was 3D scanning, how to scan real objects in and bring them into objects, and the third one was 3D modeling, which included altering stuff that you scanned in, as well as starting from scratch in a range of tools, including Tinkercad. And actually, I can't remember if I just demoed it or got them making something. Not quite sure, but that was all over Zoom earlier on. Well, last year it was actually.
Yeah.
So it went down really well.
Yeah. So we'll design something in Tinkercad. We won't actually print it up.
But if you do print it up, it's if you scale it down when you put it on into the slicer, you can print a whole load of them out at quarter scale, and it's still got the same wow factor. To be honest,
I need a 3D printer first, Matt.
Have you got one yet?
No, I'm looking. Caitlin and Eloise, they've both got 3D printers. They got them for their birthday.
Aldi are selling one for 250 quid.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it working. I haven't touched one or seen one in the flesh, but looking at the photos, it looks well built. It's not a shoddy design anyway.
The Ender 3, Creality Ender 3 version 2 looks quite, for someone who just wants to set up and go rather than think about too much, it looks okay for about £200–220 on box.co.uk.
And you're welcome to come down to the geekery if you can spare the time for the long drive or the long swim.
On your laser, you've got on your laser, has that got interchangeable heads?
Yes, it's a Snapmaker 2.
Yeah.
And you can CNC, 3D print, or laser cut with it. And you just change the heads. Let me show you. Ooh.
What sizes can it print?
Here are two of the heads.
All right. What size can it print?
Well, the model that I've got is the A350, and the 350 roughly describes the cube of the working space. So it's 350 millimeters cubed. In reality, it's more like 320 to 340 on different axes, but about that sort of size.
Okay. And what will it cut? Will it cut acrylic, wood?
Yes.
Metal? Metal?
It shouldn't cut metal. It can engrave metal. I've been up to 5mm thick plywood, and that's about its limit within a reasonable time. But really, if you want to cut something, you just keep going over it with the laser.
Yeah, yeah.
So it might be possible to cut metal, but it will take an age and just a hell of a long time. So I would say it doesn't cut metal. It can engrave it with the laser.
Yeah.
It can cut plywood up to 5mm. I haven't done much. No, actually, I haven't done any perspex or acrylic cutting or engraving, but it does definitely do it.
Yeah. What one you recommended, Andy? I missed that. I could look in the chat, but I'm lazy.
Yeah, so that was the Ender 3 version 2.
Oh, right.
So that's one Caitlin's getting for her birthday on Bank Holiday Monday. So she might do a grand opening at 10:30.
Oh dear. Yeah.
So the Ender 3s have been quite good, and lots of people we know on Twitter have got Ender 3s.
Is that what you've got, Matt? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I've got a Snapmaker 2.
Oh, a Snapmaker 2. Yeah.
And I've got a Prusa just here. That's a Prusa Mark 3S.
Yeah.
Yeah, these ones are about £200 plus or minus a little bit, depending on exchange rates, where you go and shipping.
But that Ender 3 is just a 3D printer, isn't it? I'm interested in the. I'm more interested in the laser cutter.
Yeah, Meat Lotion was asking, so I.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was also in. So the reason, Matt, I was asking is because I saw that if your Snapmaker 2 has a 15-watt laser, that's 15 watts going in, but what comes out is more like 4 watts on the laser. So I wonder.
As much as that?
Well, I don't know exactly, but I wondered how how good it was compared to a 40-watt VO2
I
laser.
forget the specs, to be honest.
I'm more interested in what it actually cuts.
You just said
Yeah.
up to 10 mil plywood. Not had much experience with acrylic, and it will certainly engrave metal. But
yeah,
I mean, you
maybe
keep
he's
going
got a
over
mega
it.
one. He's got a mega one, and or maybe he's upgraded it, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's, yeah, I think it's about 5 mil thick
Yeah.
plywood is the limit I would go, just because that takes about 7 passes to cut through.
Yeah. All right. So
yeah, this is an example of just get my mouse back.
Oh yeah. Oh, excuse me.
That's an example of
And that cut through.
Yeah. Nice.
it's
Power
difficult.
supply.
I don't think you can see, but yeah, that's it's really good for making accurate holes and graphics like that.
Yeah.
Really quite nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good. Oh, excuse me. I must go.
So when you do your software or whatever you do on a computer, how do you make it go through 7 times, or do you just?
It's a standard setting for the software I use.
Yeah.
As you make your code do so 7 times, say repeat.
Yeah, but
4.
I mean, how do you know?
7.
How do you know that that's 1 centimeter you've just cut through by doing it 7 times? How do you know to do it 7 times?
There's probably somebody's worked out, like the manufacturer, for what materials, how many passes.
Is it in the booklet? Have you got it in your booklet then? Or?
It might be. Otherwise, it's experimentation. What works?
Yeah.
The software allows you to change a lot of parameters. For example, what percentage of the power do you want to use?
Yeah.
Which is useful if you're engraving to be a bit more delicate. And the number of passes and how much to lower the focus on each pass, and a few other, like feed rate, for example, is an important one.
Yeah.
You don't want to go too slowly because it will catch fire or char or whatever. You don't want to go too fast because you don't have time to vaporize the wood. So there's a balance in all of the parameters, and where the laser beam focuses and where the heat is.
So I can't get to learn by trial and error and
yeah, definitely. That's definitely the way to go. And different materials always behave differently.
Yeah.
Even water content can make a difference with plywood. If you've got something particularly wet, it's going to need a bit more oomph.
Yeah, I suppose if you've got a 40-watt laser and you do it once and you go quickly compared to a 4-watt laser, which is doing it 7 times and going slowly, and you might, makes sense.
Yep.
Ed, have you frozen? I think Ed's frozen. She'll sneak off before he comes back.
Yeah. No, it's been a wonderful meetup, so thank you very much for attending again. It's great to see you all here again.
But yeah, we enjoy it. So
yeah.
Meat Lotion, just whilst you're there, is that what I copied from Wikipedia and put as ANSI art? Is that okay for your description?
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, that's pretty much going to be one of the beginning slides that I'm going to read out anyway. So you've done a good job there. That's pretty better. And my thought process was, why reinvent the wheel and try and come up with something when Wikipedia has pretty much covered it perfectly anyway.
Yeah, cool. Okie doke.
I've got a load of notes from those 3D printing, modeling, scanning courses that I did, if you're interested in that.
Yeah.
I can post those in the chat now.
All right, okay, cool.
They're quite easily accessible, I hope. Oh, there we go. Let me just find them. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, because I think I might have to run this one, and I've not really used Tinkercad very much. So as well as organising it, I'm going to have to quickly learn. So any notes would be cool. And also A-frame. I think you did A-frame, didn't you?
Oh, the AR stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Did
Yeah,
you have you done a tutorial on it though?
No, I've done a couple of projects for artists who wanted to do an augmented reality installation, and there are some quirks in it, but it wasn't that difficult to use actually. Once you, it was fine. I might have an example. I might have put my code on GitHub. Let me just have a look for that.
Yeah, well, my problem is I can't find any really simple workshop materials for like an 11-year-old who's done a bit of HTML.
Ah, yeah. Well, my code is depending on what's on GitHub. It might be quite simple to unpick and show something. I'm just trying to find it. Lasers, AR Web. See what state that's in. It's been a couple of years since I've even looked at it, to be honest. Well, have a look at it and see what you think. I think that's...
Is that in the chat, or shall I go and look at your...
Oh, I'll put it on the chat, and I'll share it as well afterwards in the big list of tabs from tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm really after, and I can't find something just quite simple and takes it step by step. You know, in a lot of them in 3 chunks, they've done what we want to do a whole hour. 3 paragraphs, and they covered it.
I mean, I think it would be possible to make something like that if you just whacked up a cube hanging in space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is straightforward enough to perhaps do something like that. Yeah,
I've looked at it and I'm quite impressed, and I think, I could play about with it and do some interesting things, and I probably want to. But quite a few of them are into virtual reality, and one's got an Oculus Quest 2, one's getting an Oculus Quest 2. And obviously Google Cardboard's quite cheap. So
Unity might be a good thing to get into.
But that's quite advanced. So and it's C#. They've been learning Python and HTML. But Unity is nothing we're going to look at. But currently, the A-frame is quite simple, and I just can't find any resources which are simple. That's a problem.
Yeah. So maybe there's a gap that should be filled by someone. That's quite interesting then.
Sorry about disappearing off like that. My computer crashed again.
We were going to leave, and you'd come back and be the only one.
Well, I did wonder, and I thought, well, I'll come back and say good night at least, if you're still there. But
well, we can finish.
I didn't want you to think I was being rude and just say, "Oh, screw you, lot, I'm off." But,
we know what it was. But everyone can come along next Thursday. Listen, find out about the Essex STEAMettes, find out about Meat Lotion and what he's been up to, and it'd be good to have you along. It's pretty much the same. It's just a Zoom, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the same meeting up people in the pub, isn't it, or wherever in your meeting home. It's the same people a lot of the time, unless you get guest speakers or visitors that turn up.
Well, you might get to see some of the Kent STEAMettes, or at least watch a video of them.
When?
Next Thursday.
The Kent's lot? What's that got to do with it?
The Essex STEAMettes.
Oh, yeah, make your mind up. Which one? What county are you in?
Yeah, I'm getting confused. Too many STEAMettes. So you might see some of the Essex STEAMettes next Thursday, and they'll most certainly be in the video.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
They confuse me because now they're the Morse Ninja STEAMettes. It's like another group now.
Yeah. Good. Right. Anyway, I'm going to disappear off.
Yeah.
I think I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm investigating why my laptop is dying when I move it. So I don't know why.
Plugged into the power.
Yes, it is. I wonder if they've got a fault with the power cable, with the power lead.
Have you plugged in your plug in the middle bit and make sure that's plugged in?
Have they tried turning it off and on again?
he does that automatically.
Yeah, he keeps on disappearing.
Okay, well, thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for your time.
And hopefully see you next month.
See you next month, if not before at your event, Andy. I'll have to check.
Bye, everyone.
Stuff. Good night.
Bye. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.